The Life She Never Lived. Part 1. Chapter 1. Her Choice. She sat quietly by the open window, a warm cup of tea resting in her hands. The air was thick with the scent of coming rain. She loved that smell. It reminded her of simpler times. As a child, she would run barefoot through puddles, laughing until her clothes were soaked, and her mother called her back inside. Rain had always felt alive to her. Today it felt different. Today, the approaching storm seemed to mirror the one inside her. Her elbow rested against the window frame as she stared into the gray sky. The decision, it was all she could think about. Round and round, it went through her mind. What should I do? What happens after? Will everything really be okay? No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't silence the questions. The first raindrops began to fall. Tap, tap, tap. Soon the sound grew steadier, drumming against the roof above her. The rhythm was comforting. Her eyes grew heavy. Without thinking, she placed both hands on her stomach. Then she drifted asleep. "You're it." The shout jolted her awake. A burst of laughter followed. She blinked and sat upright. Outside the window, two children were running through the rain. One chased the other through the puddles that had formed in the yard. Their laughter carried through the air. Their shoes splashed through muddy water. Their faces glowed with the kind of joy only children possess. For a moment, she simply watched and remembered. She remembered being that age. The same game, the same rain, the same smell of wet earth, the same freedom. No responsibilities, no fear, no impossible choices, just life. A sudden movement beneath her hands interrupted the memory. A kick, small, gentle, yet impossible to ignore. She froze. Another movement followed. The room suddenly felt smaller. The laughter outside seemed distant. The rain sounded louder. Everyone had told her it was the right thing to do. Everyone. The pamphlets, the counselors, the articles, the voices around her. It's a good thing. It's your right. It's your body. It's your choice. You'll be fine. Those words echoed endlessly inside her head. Day after day, week after week, she repeated them to herself until they almost sounded true. Almost, but something inside her refused to agree. Something deep, deeper than logic, deeper than fear, deeper than all the arguments she tried to tell herself. It was simple. A body, a thing. Separate the thing from the body. That was how it was explained. That was how everyone talked about it. Once separated, life would go back to normal. Everything would be okay again. Everything would be erased. Back to normal. Back to freedom. Back to life. She repeated those thoughts like prayers. But every time she did, something fought back. The feeling only grew stronger. The movement inside her only became harder to ignore. It wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical, real. The kicks, the movement, the presence. She could feel it, and no matter what words people used, no matter how carefully they explained everything, she couldn't escape the truth that something inside her was crying out, warning her, begging her, telling her that things were not as simple as they seemed. The rain continued to fall. The children continued to laugh, and for the first time, she admitted something she had been afraid to say out loud. She was terrified, not of tomorrow, not of what people would think, not of raising a child. She was terrified of crossing a line she could never uncross, a line that existed somewhere deep within every human soul. Part 2. The line that existed somewhere deep within every human soul. Invisible until the moment you stepped over it, and once crossed, impossible to return from. She stared out the window as the children disappeared around the corner. Then she looked down at her stomach. Another small movement answered her gaze, and deep inside, beneath every argument and every justification, a single question remained. What if they're wrong? That night, sleep never truly came. The clock seemed louder than usual. Every minute felt like an hour. She drifted off for moments at a time, only to wake again. At 2 in the morning, she sat on the edge of her bed. At 3, she wandered through the house. At 4, she stood at the kitchen window, staring into darkness. The world outside slept. Her mind would not. The appointment was in the morning. The thought followed her everywhere. She tried reading. She couldn't focus. She tried watching television. She couldn't follow the story. She tried praying. The words wouldn't come. The morning arrived anyway. It always does, no matter how much we wish it wouldn't. She got dressed, drove, parked, waited. The waiting room was quiet, too quiet. People sat in chairs, staring at their phones. A television played overhead. Nobody seemed to be watching. A nurse called her name. She stood. Her legs felt heavy, as if they knew something her mind was still trying to avoid. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been. Every step carried her farther from the woman she had been. No one talked about turning around. No one talked about changing your mind. No one talked about leaving. The forms had been signed. The decision had been made, or at least that's what everyone said. Inside, it didn't feel made. Inside, everything was still fighting. The room was cold. The lights were bright. Machines hummed softly. People spoke kindly, professionally, calmly, and somehow that made everything feel worse. When it was over, they told her everything had gone well. Everything was okay. Everything was normal. Everything would be fine. The words sounded strange now, empty, like lines from a script someone had memorized. Outside, the world continued, exactly as it always had. Cars drove by. Birds flew overhead. People went to work. Children played. The sun rose. The earth kept spinning. But inside her, something had changed. Something permanent. Something she could not explain. The body remained, but the soul felt different. The heart felt different. The mind felt different. The line had been crossed. Not a physical line. Not something painted on the ground. Not a fence. Not a wall. An invisible line. One that every human being eventually discovers. Sometimes too late. It exists somewhere ahead of us. Silent. Hidden. Waiting. Then one day, we look behind us and realize it's gone. Far behind us. And suddenly we understand. We crossed it. We became someone new. Someone we never imagined becoming. She felt that line now, a mile behind her, maybe further. And no matter how badly she wanted to return to the person she had been before, she couldn't. Part 3. The realization settled into her chest like a stone. For weeks, she told herself it would pass. For months, she told herself it would heal. For years, she told herself she would eventually forget. But she never did. Certain things brought it back. A stroller, a birthday party, a little girl laughing, a pregnant woman placing her hand on her stomach, the sound of rain on a rooftop. Every memory reopened the wound, and every time the wound opened, the same questions returned. What did I do? Why did I do it? Why didn't they tell me? Years passed. The world moved forward. Everyone else seemed to move forward, yet part of her remained frozen, standing beside that invisible line, looking back, wondering, always wondering, what would have happened if I had chosen differently. She never found an answer, at least not then, because this story is not only about her, it is also about the one she called a thing, a clump of cells, a problem to be solved, a decision to be made. That little life had a story too, and her story was only beginning. Chapter 2. Sonia. The first thing Sonia knew was love. Not the kind people talk about, not the kind written in books, not the kind sung about in songs. A deeper kind, a love she could feel before she could understand. It surrounded her, held her, protected her. She didn't know what words were. She didn't know what birds were, or trees, or stars, or oceans, but she knew love. She felt it every day. Sometimes it came as warmth. Sometimes it came as laughter. Sometimes it came as a familiar voice. And always, always, there was the heartbeat, steady, faithful, comforting. Sonia loved the heartbeat. She didn't know it belonged to her mother. Not yet, but she loved it anyway. She loved everything. The strange noises, the distant laughter, the music, the voices. Every sound was a mystery. Every mystery became a question, and Sonia had many questions. One day, she heard children laughing. The sound fascinated her. She didn't know what children were. She didn't know what laughter was. But she knew one thing. Whatever they were doing, she wanted to do it too. She wanted to run. She wanted to play. She wanted to see, to explore, to discover, to live. The thought filled her with excitement, and she kicked, then kicked again. And somewhere outside, her mother laughed. That made Sonia laugh too. Not with words, not with sound, but with joy, pure joy. The place where Sonia spent most of her time was beautiful, beautiful in a way she couldn't fully explain. Rolling green meadows stretched farther than she could see. Gentle hills rose in the distance. Wildflowers swayed in a warm breeze, and overhead hung a sky brighter than anything she could imagine. It was there she learned, it was there she dreamed, and it was there she met him, the giant. The first time she saw him, she wasn't afraid. She should have been. He was enormous, tall beyond measure, broad-shouldered, radiant. Everything about him seemed to glow, yet somehow he felt familiar, safe, like someone she had known forever. He sat beneath a magnificent tree, covered in white blossoms. Petals drifted gently through the air. Their fragrance filled the meadow. The giant smiled, and Sonia ran toward him. "You're back." The giant laughed, a deep, warm laugh. "Of course I'm back. What are you teaching me today?" Straight to the questions. She nodded enthusiastically. "I like questions. I know." Part 4. I know. "Will you tell me about birds today?" "Perhaps." "What about dogs?" "Maybe." "What about stars?" "Maybe those too." Sonia dropped into the grass beside him. "I think I want to know everything." The giant looked out across the meadow. "That would take a very long time." "That's okay." She smiled. "I have time." For a moment, the giant's smile faded. Only for a moment. Then it returned. "Yes, Sonia," he said softly. "You certainly should have." The giant kept his promise. Every day he returned. Every day Sonia had new questions, and every day he answered them. The meadow became their classroom. The great flowering tree became their meeting place, and little by little, Sonia learned about the world she longed to see. "Tell me about birds." The giant smiled. "Birds are little creatures the master made. Some are tiny enough to fit in your hand. Others are so large they can soar above mountains. They fly." "They do." Sonia's eyes widened. "Nobody flies." The giant laughed. "Birds do." "Then I think I'd like birds." "You would love birds." "What's your favorite bird?" The giant pretended to think. "That's difficult. My favorite would be the red one." "The cardinal?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because red is your favorite color." Sonia grinned. "It is?" "It would have been." For a moment, she tilted her head. "Would have been?" The giant quickly changed the subject. "Let's talk about bees." "What's a bee?" And the questions continued. Every day, every lesson, every dream, the giant taught her about honey, about flowers, about mountains, about oceans, about deserts, about snow. She loved snow, even though she had never seen it. The giant described tiny crystals falling from the sky and covering the world in white. Sonia decided immediately that snow must be magical. Then he told her about books. That became her favorite lesson. "What are books?" The giant picked up a fallen blossom. He held it in his hand. "A book is a way people tell stories." "What kind of stories?" "Every kind." "Adventures?" "Yes." "Love stories?" "Yes." "Stories about brave people?" "Yes." "What about stories about the master?" The giant smiled. "Especially those." Sonia smiled. "I think I'd like books." The giant smiled too. "I know you would." One day, Sonia asked a question she had never asked before. "What is my name?" The giant looked surprised. You've never asked me that. I know. Why now? She shrugged. I was just wondering. The giant sat quietly for a moment. Then he smiled. Your name is Sonia. Sonia. She repeated it carefully. Sonia. Then she smiled. I like it. So does your mother. My mother named me. She did. Why? The giant looked toward the horizon. A soft breeze moved through the meadow. The white petals danced around them. You were named after someone very special. Who? A woman named Sonia. My name? The giant laughed. Yes, your name. What was she like? Part 5. What was she like? The giant smiled. Strong, strong, very strong. He leaned back against the tree. She lived through difficult times. How difficult? There were years when people had almost nothing. Sonia listened carefully. They didn't have toys. Many didn't. That sounds terrible. The giant chuckled. They survived. How? They worked. What kind of work? Hard work. He told her about the farm, about making clothes, about making soap, about growing food, about determination, about perseverance, about courage, about getting up every morning and doing what needed to be done. Even when life was difficult, Sonia listened with fascination. By the end of the story, she sat quietly, thinking. Finally she spoke. I like her. I thought you might. Do you think I'm like her? The giant smiled. In many ways. Sonia sat a little taller, proud, very proud. Then I want to be strong too. You would have been. Again, that phrase, would have been. This time Sonia noticed. She had heard it before, several times. The giant noticed, she noticed, but neither one said anything. The meadow fell silent. Only the wind moved through the flowers. As the days passed, something began to change. At first, Sonia barely noticed it. The distant valley, the one hidden behind the hills, the one the giant never talked about. It seemed closer. Not much, just a little. The clouds above it seemed darker, the flashes of light more frequent. Sometimes she could hear thunder, very faint, very far away. One afternoon, she finally pointed toward it. What's that? The giant followed her gaze. His smile disappeared, only for a moment. Then it returned. That's a valley. I know. She crossed her arms. You already told me that. The giant laughed. You're right. She pointed again. What's in it? For the first time since she had met him, the giant didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared toward the dark horizon, watching, thinking, as though deciding how much to tell her. Finally, he looked down at Sonia, and when he did, something was different. A sadness rested behind his eyes, a sadness she had never seen before, and for the first time, Sonia felt afraid, just a little. The giant reached down and gently took her hand. Sonia, his voice was softer now. There is something I need to tell you. The words settled heavily between them. The wind seemed colder. The meadow seemed quieter. Even the birds that normally danced through the air seemed absent. Sonia looked again toward the valley. The lightning flashed, a thin streak of white across dark clouds. Then another, then another. What is it? The giant remained silent. What do you need to tell me? Still silence. Sonia squeezed his hand, the way children do when they know something is wrong, but don't yet understand what it is. Am I in trouble? The giant smiled sadly. No. Then why do you look sad? The giant looked away, toward the valley, toward the storm, toward something only he seemed to understand. Then he looked back at her, and for the first time since she had met him, there were tears in his eyes. Sonia froze. What is that? The giant laughed softly, a sad laugh. Tears. You told me about those. I did. You said people cry when they're sad. The giant nodded. Sometimes. Are you sad? The giant looked away again. Very. Sonia's stomach tightened, a feeling she had never experienced before. Fear. Not overwhelming fear, just enough to make her heart beat faster, just enough to make her wonder if something bad was coming. Part 6. The giant stood slowly, then offered his hand. Come walk with me. Where? The hill. Sonia took his hand. Together, they walked through the meadow, past the flowers, past the white blossoms, drifting through the air, past the places where they had laughed and learned together, toward the hill that overlooked the valley. As they climbed, the storm became easier to see, and Sonia suddenly realized something. The valley wasn't getting closer. The valley had been moving toward them the entire time, and now it was almost here. Chapter 3. Bad News. The next morning felt different. Sonia noticed it immediately. The meadow was still beautiful. The grass was still green. The white blossoms still drifted from the great tree. But something had changed. The giant was late. That had never happened before. Normally, he was already waiting beneath the tree when she arrived. Today, the tree stood alone. Sonia sat down and waited. Then she waited some more. Finally, she saw him walking down the familiar path, slowly, much more slowly than usual. His shoulders seemed heavy, his head tilted toward the ground, and when he finally reached the tree, he did not smile. Sonia, his voice was gentle, but it carried a weight she had never heard before. She stood. What's wrong? The giant lowered himself onto the grass. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked toward the valley. Only it wasn't distant anymore. The dark clouds had moved closer. The flashes of lightning were brighter, the thunder louder. Sonia sat beside him. Is it the valley? The giant nodded. Yes. She stared at it. The wind coming from that direction felt colder now, much colder. I don't like it. I know. Can it hurt us? The giant looked at her, then looked away, and Sonia knew whatever he was about to say, she wasn't going to like it. The giant drew a long breath. Sonia, do you remember when I told you about free will? She nodded. The freedom people have to choose. That's right. He folded his hands together. The master created people with the ability to choose because he wanted them to love him. The giant smiled faintly. You are listening. I always listen. I know. The smile faded. Sometimes people make beautiful choices. Sonia nodded. Like helping people. Exactly. And loving people. Yes. And being brave. Yes. The giant's voice grew quieter. But sometimes people make painful choices. The wind picked up. The blossoms around them began to drift faster. Sonia suddenly felt very small. The giant reached for her hand. His hand trembled, just slightly. She had never seen that before. Why are you sad? The giant looked at her. Because now he could no longer avoid the truth. Because I love you. Sonia smiled. I love you too. A tear formed in the corner of his eye, and for the first time since she had known him, he cried. Sonia froze. What is that? The giant laughed softly through the tears. You remember me telling you about crying? She nodded. You said people do it when they're sad. Sometimes. Are you sad? The giant looked away. Very. Because of me? No. Then why? The giant looked toward the valley, toward the approaching darkness, toward the storm, toward the thing he wished he never had to explain. Part 7. The thunder rolled again. Closer now. Much closer. Sonia looked toward the valley. The darkness seemed alive, moving, growing, advancing. The giant stood. Sonia, she stood too. He pointed toward the horizon. Do you remember all the things we've talked about? The birds. Yes. The books. Yes. The oceans. The snow. Yes. The stars. Yes. The master. A smile returned briefly. Especially the master. Sonia nodded. I remember all of it. The giant's eyes filled again. Good. Why? Because those memories were all she would ever have. But he couldn't bring himself to say it. Not yet. Instead, he knelt before her. The thunder boomed. The meadow shook. And the valley seemed closer than ever before. Sonia, his voice broke. And suddenly Sonia became frightened. Truly frightened. What is it? The giant took both of her hands. The valley is coming. She looked toward it. I know. No. His eyes met hers. It's coming for you. Everything became still. even the wind, even the thunder, even the meadow, everything. Sonia blinked. I don't understand. The giant swallowed. You remember when I told you about being born? Yes, and growing up. Yes, and playing. Yes, and learning. Yes, and one day, having children of your own. Sonia smiled. Yes, the giant lowered his eyes. Then came the words he never wanted to say. Sonia, she waited. Those things aren't going to happen. Silence, complete silence, the kind of silence that only exists when a heart breaks. I don't understand. The giant closed his eyes. The world has made a choice. What choice? A choice that will keep you from entering it. Sonia stared at him, confused, lost, trying desperately to understand. But I want to live. The giant's face tightened. I know. I want to see birds. I know. I want to read books. I know. I want to see snow. I know. Her voice began shaking. I want to meet my mom. The giant looked away. A tear fell onto the grass. I know. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The thunder continued drawing nearer. The dark valley continued advancing. Finally, Sonia whispered, Will it hurt? The giant nodded slowly. Only for a moment. She looked down. A moment. Only a moment. Then he placed his hand gently over her heart. And then you'll be with the master. Sonia looked up. The real master? Yes, the one you told me about. Yes, the one who made the birds. Yes, the oceans. Yes, the stars. Yes, the flowers. Yes, the one who loves me. The giant smiled through tears. More than you can imagine. For the first time since the conversation began, Sonia smiled. Small, fragile, but real. Then I want to meet him. The giant squeezed her hand. You will. Sonia looked toward the valley again. The storm was almost upon them now, and though she was afraid, another question had begun forming in her heart. A question she could not let go. A question bigger than the valley, bigger than the storm, bigger than the fear. Part 8. Another question had begun forming in her heart. A question she could not let go. A question bigger than the valley, bigger than the storm, bigger than the fear. She looked at the giant. Can I ask something? The giant smiled. You can ask anything. Sonia looked down at the grass beneath her feet. The beautiful green grass. The grass she would never run through. The grass she would never fall into. The grass she would never feel between her toes. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, almost a whisper. I want to know. The giant waited. I want to know what my life would have been like. The words hung in the air. The wind seemed softer. Even the storm felt as though it had paused to listen. My life, she swallowed. If I had lived. The giant lowered his eyes. Of all the questions she had asked, what birds were, what trees were, what music was, what books were, what laughter was, this was the first question he wished she had never asked, not because he didn't want her to know, but because he knew the answer would hurt. Sonia looked at him. Would I have liked the color red? A small smile crossed his face. Very much, she smiled back. And roses? You would have loved roses. And books? You would have filled entire shelves with them. Her smile widened, then faded. What about people? The giant looked away toward the storm. People would have loved you, Sonia. The answer seemed to satisfy her for a moment. Then she asked the real question again. What would have my life been like? The giant drew a deep breath, then looked toward the sky, toward the place where the master watched, toward the one who knew every moment Sonia would never have. And quietly he said, I'll ask him. Sonia's eyes widened. You will? I will. Really? The giant nodded. Really? For the first time all day, Sonia smiled, and the giant smiled too, because tomorrow the master would answer. Chapter 4. Your life. The storm was close now, very close. The dark valley that had once been a distant shadow on the horizon now stood at the edge of the meadow. The wind carried cold rain. Thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning flashed between the clouds. Sonia could feel it. The end of her journey was near. Yet somehow she felt calm. Not because she wasn't afraid, she was, but because the giant had stayed, just as he promised. He had never left her side, not once, and today was no different. Hand in hand, they stood beneath the great flowering tree, the same tree where she had learned about birds, about books, about snow, about the master, about love, the same tree where she had spent what felt like a lifetime asking questions. The giant looked down at her. The master heard your request. Sonia's eyes widened. My request? He smiled. Yes, immediately she knew. The one about my life? The giant nodded. Joy exploded across her face. Really? Really? She jumped up and down, just like a child, because she was one. He's going to show me. Yes, the giant laughed softly. I've never seen anyone so excited on a day like today. Sonia stopped jumping. Well, you told me life is wonderful. It is. And I want to know what mine would have been like. The giant's smile faded slightly. I know. The wind suddenly stopped. The thunder faded. The meadow grew silent. Then something extraordinary happened. Before them, the air itself began to shimmer, like heat rising from the ground. A veil formed, a wall of light, a window, a living picture. Part 9. A living picture. Sonia gasped. What is that? The giant smiled. The master is showing you. Slowly, the image became clear. A playground, children, laughter, sunshine, a little girl running across the grass, her hair blowing in the wind, her smile brighter than the sun above her. Sonia pointed. That's me. The giant nodded. That's you. Sonia laughed. I knew I'd like playing. The little girl climbed monkey bars, ran through sprinklers, scraped her knee, got back up, and kept running. What's she doing now? Learning. Learning what? How to be a child. Sonia smiled. I think I would have been good at that. The giant laughed. I think so too. The image shifted. The little girl grew older. A classroom appeared. Books, desks, teachers, friends. Sonia watched herself reading, writing, asking questions, always asking questions. She laughed. I ask a lot of questions. You do. I would have asked my teachers a lot of questions too. The giant nodded. They would have known your name very quickly. Sonia smiled proudly. The image changed again. She saw herself helping another student. Then another. Then another. Why am I doing that? Because you cared about people. The answer made her smile. That felt right. The vision moved forward. Years passed in moments. The little girl became a teenager. Sonia watched herself walk through crowded hallways, carrying books. She saw herself sitting beneath trees reading, laughing with friends, learning about the world, dreaming about the future, sometimes succeeding, sometimes failing, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, until her stomach hurt. The giant watched quietly as Sonia absorbed every moment. That's really me? It would have been. Sonia stared at the image. She couldn't look away. The vision changed once more. Now she was older, much older, a young woman. She stood on a college campus, carrying books beneath her arm. Tall buildings surrounded her. Students hurried from place to place. The air seemed full of excitement. Sonia's eyes widened. College, the giant smiled. You remembered. I went? You did. What did I study? The giant pointed. The image shifted again. Fields, greenhouses, research stations, plants growing in rows, farmers working under the sun. Sonia watched herself taking notes, examining plants, talking with people, solving problems, helping families, helping communities, helping places where food was difficult to grow. I became a scientist. You did. Why? The giant smiled. Because your family taught you that hard work matters. My great-great-grandmother. Exactly. Sonia watched carefully. The young woman in the vision never seemed satisfied with simply knowing things. She wanted to help. She wanted to make life better. She wanted to leave the world a little better than she found it. I liked helping people. The giant smiled warmly. You loved helping people. The vision continued. Years moved forward. Successes came. Failures came too. Projects that worked. Projects that didn't. Dreams achieved. Dreams lost. But through all of it, the woman kept moving forward, learning, growing, becoming. Sonia watched every second. Every moment felt precious because she knew now what life truly was. Not perfection, not constant happiness, but growth, choice, experience, love. And she wanted more. She wanted to keep watching. She wanted to see what happened next. Then suddenly, someone else appeared in the vision. Someone standing beside her. Part 10. Someone standing beside her. A young man. Kind eyes. Gentle smile. Strong hands. Sonia immediately noticed. Who's that? The giant smiled. Someone important. The young man laughed at something future Sonia said. Future Sonia laughed too. Sonia looked back at the giant. Oh, the giant laughed. Oh, Sonia crossed her arms. They both laughed. Sonia watched them walk together, talk together, grow together. The image warmed her heart. The young man wasn't perfect. The giant explained that nobody was. Sometimes they disagreed. Sometimes they struggled. Sometimes they worried about money. Sometimes life was difficult. There were days when they were frustrated with each other. Days when they misunderstood each other. Days when they had to choose forgiveness. But through all of it, they stayed together. They learned. They grew. They loved. And little by little, they built something neither could have built alone. A home, a family, a life. Sonia watched them sit on a porch together. She watched them pray together. She watched them laugh together. She watched them carry each other through difficult seasons. And for the first time, she understood something the giant had been trying to teach her all along. Love wasn't simply a feeling. Love was a choice made again and again, every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. The vision moved forward, and then Sonia saw something else. Children, 5 of them, running, laughing, playing, the way the children outside her mother's window had played. 3 boys, 2 girls. The oldest boy was brave. The second loved building things. The youngest boy never stopped asking questions. The oldest daughter loved animals. The youngest daughter loved books. Sonia covered her mouth. Those are mine. The giant nodded. Those are yours. She stared, unable to look away. The children climbed onto future Sonia's lap, wrapped their arms around her, laughed, loved, belonged. Tears filled Sonia's eyes. I would have loved them. The giant's voice was barely above a whisper. I know. The vision continued. The children grew. The oldest boy scraped his knees. The youngest daughter stayed up late reading. One son broke his arm. Another got into trouble at school. There were birthday parties, Christmas mornings, school plays, family photographs, camping trips, late-night conversations, tears, laughter, ordinary moments, simple moments, moments most people barely notice. Yet Sonia noticed everyone because she would never have them, and somehow that made them precious. She watched herself tuck her children into bed. She watched herself comfort them when they were scared. She watched herself cheer for them when they succeeded. She watched herself cry when they were hurting, and through it all, she loved them fiercely, completely, without condition. The giant watched Sonia's face. Tears streamed down her cheeks now, but she never looked away, not for a second. She wanted to remember every moment, every smile, every laugh, every hug, every story, because these children had become real to her, not real in the world, but real in her heart, and she loved them just as any mother would. The vision moved forward once more. Years began passing faster. The children became teenagers, then adults. Then something extraordinary happened. Children appeared beside them. More children, a new generation, and Sonia gasped. Who are they? The giant smiled. Your grandchildren. Part 11. Your grandchildren. My grandchildren? Sonia laughed through tears. There are so many. The giant laughed too. There would have been more than you expected. The grandchildren ran through the yard, played games, asked questions, climbed into her lap, just like her children once had. One loved drawing, one loved baseball, another loved reading books, one wanted to become a doctor, another wanted to travel the world, each one different, each one unique, each one carrying a small piece of the family story forward. Sonia watched herself, sitting beneath a large tree, a grandchild, rested against each side of her. One sat in her lap, another tugged at her sleeve, asking questions. The image made her smile. That would have been nice. The giant nodded. It would have. The vision continued. Years became decades. The family tree spread farther and farther, like branches reaching toward the sky. The children became parents. The grandchildren became parents. Then great-grandchildren appeared. Then more and more. Sonia could barely keep count. All of those people. The giant nodded. Connected to you. Sonia stared in amazement. Every face, every laugh, every story, every life. Connected. One choice, one life, touching hundreds of others. The vision shifted again. She saw graduations, weddings, births, family reunions, holiday dinners, photographs spanning generations, stories being passed down, lessons being shared, traditions continuing, people whose lives would never have existed without the lives before them. The giant pointed. See that little girl? Sonia nodded. She grows up to help thousands of people. The image shifted. See that young boy? Yes, he becomes a teacher. Another shift. That woman there? Yes, she discovers something that saves lives. Sonia stared. The ripple effects stretched farther than she could imagine, one life touching another, like stones dropped into a pond, the circles widening endlessly. The vision finally slowed, then stopped. At the center stood an older woman, gray hair, kind eyes, a warm smile. Children surrounded her, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, stories, love, life. The old woman laughed, and everyone around her laughed too. Sonia pointed. Who's that? The giant smiled. That's you. Sonia couldn't speak. She simply stared. That's me. That's you. The old woman looked happy, not because life had been easy. The giant explained. There had been hardship, loss, pain, disappointment, heartbreak, dreams that didn't work out, people she loved who passed away, days when she cried, days when she questioned everything, days when she felt alone. But there had also been joy, purpose, friendship, love, faith, and through it all, the master had remained faithful. Sonia watched silently for a very long time. Then tears began rolling down her cheeks, not tears of fear, not tears of sadness, but tears of understanding, because for the first time, she understood what life really was. Not perfection, not ease, not comfort. Life was the gift itself, the chance to experience, the chance to love, the chance to be loved, the chance to matter, the chance to leave fingerprints on the world. And now, she understood exactly what she had asked to see. The vision remained for a few moments longer. The older Sonia smiled. The children smiled. The grandchildren smiled. The great-grandchildren smiled. Then slowly, very slowly, the picture began to fade. Part 12. The picture began to fade. The colors disappeared first, then the faces, then the voices, then the laughter, until finally, the meadow stood before them once again. The storm returned, the wind returned, the thunder returned, reality returned. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Sonia stood silently, staring at the place where her life had been only moments before, a life she now knew intimately, a life she had seen from beginning to end, a life she would never live. Finally she whispered, "That was beautiful." The giant nodded. It was. Sonia looked down at the grass, the same grass she had walked across every day, the same grass beneath the flowering tree, the same grass she would soon leave behind. I would have liked my life. The giant swallowed. You would have. She nodded slowly. I would have liked being a little girl. You would have. And reading books. You would have loved books and helping people. You would have helped many. And my children. The giant smiled. You would have loved them fiercely. Sonia looked toward the place where the vision had disappeared. For a moment, she seemed lost in thought. Then she asked something the giant had not expected. Do they know? The giant tilted his head. Who? My children. The giant understood. He looked down, then back at her. No, Sonia nodded. I didn't think so. The answer somehow made her sad, not because she expected them to know, but because she had loved them, even though they never existed, even though they never would. Somehow, she loved them anyway. The giant watched her quietly. The storm continued growing. The valley waited. The thunder rolled again. Closer now, closer than it had ever been. Sonia looked toward the dark clouds. The fear she had managed to forget returned, not all at once, slowly, like cold water, rising around her feet. She knew what was coming, and she knew there was no stopping it. Finally, she looked up. Can I ask one more question? The giant smiled. You always have one more question. Sonia laughed softly. I know. She took a deep breath. Why did the master let me see all of that? The giant looked toward the heavens, then back at her. Because he loves you. Sonia nodded. The answer felt right, not complete, but right. She looked toward the valley. The lightning flashed. The thunder cracked. The darkness churned. The end had arrived. For the first time since seeing the vision, fear returned. A real fear. The fear of pain. The fear of the unknown. The fear every person feels before stepping into something they do not understand. The giant knelt beside her and held out his hand. Immediately she took it, just as she always had. Will you stay with me? The giant squeezed her hand. Every step. Sonia nodded. Promise? I promise. Together, they began walking toward the valley, toward the storm, toward the darkness. Part 12b. Toward the thing Sonia had feared. Since the day she first saw it on the horizon, the wind howled, rain began to fall. The white blossoms from the tree were carried away behind them, one by one, until only the storm remained. The valley was enormous now, far larger than Sonia had imagined. Lightning tore across the sky. Thunder shook the ground beneath their feet. Yet she continued walking, hand in hand with the giant, step after step, closer, closer, closer. Then she stopped. The giant stopped too. Sonia looked back one last time, back toward the meadow, back toward the flowering tree, back toward the place where she had learned about birds, about books, about snow, about love, about the master, the place that had been her home, the place where she had dreamed, the place where she had laughed, the place where she had imagined a life she would never live. She smiled, then turned forward again, ready not because she wanted to be, but because there was nowhere else to go. The giant squeezed her hand, and together they stepped into the darkness. The wind disappeared, the thunder vanished, the rain stopped, the pain came, sharp, sudden, brief, then nothing, silence, perfect silence. Sonia opened her eyes. The darkness was gone, the valley was gone, the storm was gone, and standing before her was light, not ordinary light, not sunlight, not lightning, not the glow of the giant, something infinitely brighter, infinitely warmer, infinitely more beautiful, a love so powerful she could feel it before she understood it, the same love she had known from the beginning, only now she knew where it came from. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, not from fear, but from joy. The giant smiled, then stepped aside. Sonia stared into the light, and for the first time she saw the master, the one who knew her, the one who formed her, the one who loved her, the one who knew every moment of the life she never lived, and every moment of the eternity she now would. The master opened his arms, and Sonia ran to him. The end